Welcome to Prior, otherwise known as Patty Reviews Everything, where I get to review stuff that I like. So today, I just got back, literally from the movie theater, I just got back from watching SHAZAM. I'm going to be giving my spoiler-free review on SHAZAM, so don't worry, no spoilers here, kick back and relax. Just going to talk about things that I liked, things that I didn't like, and overall take on the movie, if you guys should go see it or not. Cool? Cool. So let's just jump into it. Starting off, let's talk about the things that I liked. I think Zachary Levi as SHAZAM was really good. I think Asher Angel as Billy Batson, the kid who becomes SHAZAM, played a really well role. There are some scenes that seem a little too cheesy, but it's not a big deal. It's just kind of how like cliche things happen. Like something cliche just kind of inherently comes off as cheesy, but I'll get to that when I talk about things that I didn't like. Jack Dillon Graves, the guy that, or the kid that's in It, and I believe something else, or he's in a, maybe it's just It that I know him from. He's really good. I actually think he steals most of the scenes that he's in because he has just the mannerism that he has. When I talk about the comedy that this movie kind of brings, I think he definitely has like a really good tone to it, a really good feel. Like I think he really contributes a good amount to the comedy, but not like too much. Like he kind of holds in his pocket. I think it's really good for like a supporting role. Mark Strong as the villain, nothing wrong with him, but like he just kind of, I don't know, he's just kind of evil. Like you know why he's driven, so I'll give them that. Like you can understand why he's doing what he's doing. I get him that, but like he wasn't that intimidating. Like he didn't like steal the scene or anything. He's just kind of an evil guy, like kind of like your average run of the mill. Like not Iron Man too bad, like not that bad, but like just kind of like run of the mill, gets the job done. Nothing crazy. It's not that iconic of a villain. I don't think this is like anything iconic. It's not like a Black Adam, right? I believe when Black Adam comes, which will obviously be played by The Rock, I think when Black Adam comes, they'll put more emphasis on like really having that be like an actual like competitor, equal or whatever. But Mark Strong as a villain, I thought was fine. It did its job. Let's talk about like the pacing. I think the pacing was done really well. I believe the movie is a little over 2 hours long, but it doesn't really feel over 2 hours long because it's pretty fun and lighthearted and easy to really get into. A lot of the jokes, I think the comedy in this movie definitely, at least in my, like, because obviously people have different types of like comedic backgrounds. People like different styles of comedy. I think this one fit in like my pocket because there were a couple times where I did not like laugh out loud, but I chuckled a good amount of times. Like, like okay, that was good. Like I can get like what they were doing with the premise, the setup, the execution. You know, there are some jokes though that kind of ruin a scene. I'll talk about that when it comes to like some of the issues. It kind of has the Ant-Man effect that I've talked about before, which isn't like horribly bad. I just when it comes to like overall tone and stuff, I'll explain why that becomes an issue. And also there are some jokes that seem a little cheap, but like cheap as in the jokes seem childish, but you also understand it because the character themselves are childish, so you understand why that joke is there. Like it's not out of pocket. It's just kind of, it feels as if like the character would do that joke, but since the kid is 14 or 15, it's a 14 to 15 level joke, like year-old joke, if that makes sense. So like you can relate because you're like, oh yeah, I would probably do something like that when I was 14 or 15, but like, you know, it's not a bad thing. It understands its tone is what I'm trying to get at. Another thing that I liked was I think the chemistry between Freddy and Billy, or Freddy and SHAZAM, regardless of who SHAZAM was at the time, was Billy or actually SHAZAM, was done really well. I think they had a really nice dynamic because you could tell even when he was SHAZAM, it was still kind of like two teenagers really talking to each other. And kind of vibing out and, you know, becoming friends, which was, you know, it was nice. It made the movie easy to watch. It kept with the pacing, kept with the progression, you know, pretty fluent.
Dude, did you see that?
Yeah, you electrocuted a bus and almost killed these people.
And then I caught it.
The overall story, it's pretty much of just like you know, it's an overcoming story. It's more of Billy Batson kind of finding out who he is and kind of figuring out what he wants to do with like certain situations, which I don't want to get too much in detail on why the characters kind of matter and stuff. The comedy was done well. The pacing is fine, and it's a pretty like average film. It's a pretty solid film. Like it's a very fun movie to watch. It's not hard to really invest your time into it. Like it's fun as in like people can watch Ant-Man and really enjoy it because it's a fun, easy film, but I don't like Ant-Man because all the shit that happens in it doesn't make sense. But as for Shazam, there's a lot of stuff that happens that I don't inherently agree with, but it's not to that level. So it's better than Ant-Man is what I'm trying to get at. So all right, let's talk about things that I don't like. So I feel like it's a lot easier to really go on to something that you didn't inherently like instead of praising something that you did like. So overall, though, I did enjoy this film. I'm just gonna kind of go about what I didn't like. So what I didn't like, the setup for the villain was kind of stupid. Like it makes sense because when it first happened, you're just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of setup is this? Like, this is so out of the reach. But then you understand, like, oh, I get it. It's just one of these things that happens because they explain why it happened, and it happens to multiple types of people. Like, I'm trying to keep this very big, so it doesn't make sense. Yeah, obviously you'd have to watch the movie to know what I mean. But like, there are some characters that are like way too over the top. Something happens where the villain, before he's a villain, this is like back in the past when the villain was a lot younger. Something happens, and the people who are affected by it kind of don't act like that they were affected. Like, I just don't think the emotion was portrayed correctly because something crazy happens, and like the usual reaction to something like this would be a lot more intense, but it kind of just like shifts the blame onto the villain to kind of push the plot and catalyst along. Like, the catalyst then tries to push the plot along, and that's my issue with this film. Is yes, there's good pacing, but there's a lot of kind of like cliche instances that happen that try to push this plot along, and like to make the villain a villain, or like when Shazam is a hero, something happens to where he has to kind of be like the hero, but like how it happens is pretty cliche. You've seen it happen a lot of times, and that was my issue with, like, I haven't talked about it, but like in the new Joker movie coming out, there's like a part where like a bunch of thugs kind of gang up on him and like push him down to the ground physically, and it's like you could show other ways to be pushed to the ground, but not physically. Like in Spider-Man 2, they like really tear Tobey Maguire down, like by like, you lost your girl, you lost your job, like they mentally pull him down, right? Which I thought was effective, but like physically doing something like that feels kind of cheap. And they had that in like Shazam, where like, a bunch of thugs come out and like are doing something, and he's like, oh, I gotta be a hero. And then he becomes a hero, and it's like the chances of that actually happening are so like unrealistic. And there's a lot of instances where like the coincidences are like 1 in a million. Like, Shazam saves someone that he knew, and it's like, you're in Philadelphia. What are the fucking odds of that happening, It's like little things like that that are really cliche that try to push the plot along to keep it going, and I just kind of find that as poor writing because it becomes way too coincidental. Like the phrase is convenience is convenient. That happens a lot in this film, and that might not bother a lot of people, but like to me it does, because it just seems like it's kind of shitty writing at that point, because you're trying to like connect these dots that aren't, like, you're trying to force dots to connect when they don't need to be connected to begin with, because Shazam could go help someone. It doesn't matter if the person knew Shazam or not. Shazam could just be in a different situation where he has to help someone just normally because like he's supposed to be a good pure person to help someone because he has these powers, if that makes sense. So instead of saving someone that he inherently knows, he could be in a situation, he then saves someone, and that's it. Like, no dots need to be connected, just the act of him saving someone could happen still. Another issue I have is, I think, minus the main characters that they kind of focus on with like Billy and Freddy, because it's really their dynamic, everyone else is kind of just throwaway. Like, you literally know nothing of them. They kind of just become like side characters to like a main storyline game. Like in Pokemon X and Y, you play it and like you have your whole group of like friends, but you literally know nothing about them. Like, yeah, Tierno dances, Trevor likes the Pokédex, but what else? It's kind of like that. There's characters in this movie that are side characters, and they have like some value to the main character because like they're relevant in the story, but you know nothing about them really, and it kind of becomes like one-dimensional characters, so they're just not interesting at that point when they try to have screen time or anything like on like any importance to the film. Then becomes kind of whatever, because the character itself is whatever. You can have side characters that are very fleshed out and very realistic and relatable. It's just hard to do that. It's hard to relate or even care for them when they become just a one-dimensional character. Also, there's a part in the movie where there's like character development, but the way they set up the character development is such a reach, it literally doesn't make any sense at all, because like I said, the character being one-dimensional does like a one-dimensional thing, like a side character does that, and you're like, it's really hard to buy that it happened, and it's just poor writing to try to push the plot along to develop the main character. But what happens to the main character was good. It's just the way that they set it up was weird, and I didn't buy it. As I said earlier, the villain's kind of just meh. You know, doesn't really steal the scene or anyway. Like it's just kind of like Deadpool. Like it's a villain to be a villain. Like they have direction, it has purpose, but I don't know. He doesn't really steal the scene or anything. I will give the movie credit, like, so usually when something happens that'll take place later in like the third act is usually like some key information you learn earlier in the film. Like for example, Ant-Man's like, oh, you can't go through titanium normally, so you have to get really small to go through titanium. You're like, okay, that's obviously going to be used in the third act, and sure enough, in the third act, I gotta go through this titanium suit so I can tear it apart, blah blah blah, you know, stuff like that. This movie doesn't really do that. The way that the, you know, figure out how to fight the enemy happens while in the fight. So it wasn't like something happened and then he uses it later within the movie. It's something happens and it's portrayed away, and then the character puts it together and goes, oh, okay, that's how I have to do it, and then does it in the same fight. Well, in the same like act, I guess you would say, which I do give them credit for that, because it's like the character kind of adapting to situations, you know, showing its intelligence. The CGI was kind of the CGI was meh. There were some iffy moments where the CGI looked pretty subpar. Now, another issue I want to have is, like I said, it was funny, which is good. Obviously, comedy helps people enjoy a film kind of inherently, because if they laugh, they think they're having a good time. Good time just means it's inherently a good thing. But there are times where the writers kind of pull like a Marvel instance, and they take a cheap joke over keeping the intensity of a situation. So they did that in Ant-Man plenty of times, which was one of my big gripes against that movie. As you can tell, I don't fuck with Ant-Man, but I already made a whole pre on that. I'm just using it as an example because it's a video I've already made and already established on it. So like there's a part, no spoiler, but like something intense is happening. They kind of not break away, but something intense is happening, and they kind of, like, the intensity slows down a little bit, but like the overall scene is still intense. Like the overall scene is still intense. It's just it's not up in your face. It kind of draws out to more of just an intense scene, and then they kind of throw a joke to throw a joke, and that then ruins the intensity of the scene. It kind of belittles. It kind of belittles the villain. And it kind of belittles like the situation at hand when it should be way more intense. Like, I'm not saying it has to be super intense where people are crying and, like, you know, there's no fun at all, but I just think you need to pick and choose where to place these like jokes to be used, which they do that well at times. Like, there are moments where it's intense and like the level of joke is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, the level of joke is like a 2, and they just kind of slip the 2 in there, so it's not the main focal point of the joke. It's just a little mannerism that kind of, you know, keeps it in pocket. But then when you take the intensity of a scene and you make the whole forefront the joke, that's where the issue becomes, because it's no longer about the intensity of the scene anymore. It's more about the, hey, there's this joke right here, and when this is gone, it'll go back to being intense. But then it just ruins the pacing of, not the pacing, but it kind of ruins the flow of what that movie, it ruins the flow of what that scene initially was. Like I said, I don't want to give spoilers, but example for Ant-Man, they're in that locked up room. The villain, the yellow jacket guy, I forgot his name, he's bald, is telling the original Ant-Man some like crazy shit like, fuck you, I'm gonna ruin the world, blah blah blah, ain't nothing you can do about it. Old man punches him in the face. It's still intense, the joke hasn't happened yet, and then the guy goes, wow, you hit really hard. I mean, I saw it like a mile away, but like I didn't expect it like that. I thought it'd be more of like a tap, like something along those lines. Like the joke then like talks about more of the punch and not what was being said, and then they don't bring up what he said ever again, and it just kind of ruins the scene. It's like, it was starting to be intense, you made a joke, and then now it's like trying to rebuild back up, when he could have just kept it being intense and threw kind of mini mannerism jokes or little kind of bits along the way, instead of changing the entirety of the scene into a joke. I know I'm saying like I've been on that for a minute, but a lot of movies are doing that. I'm not like the biggest fan about that. Like, I don't understand why this kind of form of writing is getting to the point where a joke is going to become the forefront of a movie that's not that the scene doesn't really need to become the forefront. And also all these catalysts are becoming really cliche to try to overly like push the movie along. Like I feel like if you're as a writer, you can think of more ways to push the story along, or to put these characters in situations where they have to act upon on, because I'm getting tired of seeing, like, this isn't just Shazam, this is more of me kind of just getting on like all films now. There's more ways to, like, I'm tired of seeing the same fucking 4 setups to push a movie along. A gang of guys come up and you gotta stop them. Okay, I've seen that in like 80 fucking films. Oh, people are in danger and they're dangling and you need to help them. Like, I've seen that before. Like, think of new ways. Like, I understand, like, obviously you've seen it before means it's possible that it could happen, so you take the common route because commonness means it's most likely. But you could keep something common but bring a different new edge to it. You know, I don't know if that makes sense or not. I sounds like I'm griping on this movie a lot because I did enjoy this film. I'm just trying to really get in the idea of, like, I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. Like, when you say you like something, people tend to just inherently agree with you off the bat, like, oh, I like that, and they go, oh, okay, cool. But when you say you dislike it, they want, like, XYZ, Y, crew, statement, claim, review, evidence, warrant on it, you know? So, I know I sound like I'm really digging in on this movie, but it's not. It's a solid film. It's a solid, like, I give this movie, like, a 7 out of 10. I think that'd be my overall rating, 7 out of 10. I would recommend seeing it. Probably would buy the movie on DVD or Blu-ray, not maybe like right when it first came out, but as the price dropped over time. I think, oh, it's a standalone film on top of that. Like, they do reference the universe that it takes place in the DCU or whatever, but it's a standalone film. It doesn't really set up anything besides possibly its own sequel, but it doesn't really set up anything more than it needs to be, which is really good because I'm tired of seeing movies take 8 movies to set up one movie, which that movie also set up 8 other fucking movies, and that movie sets up another, like, you know, if that makes sense. It's its own standalone movie, which is nice. It's just like, cool, I can watch this and not know anything else about any other fucking movies and still enjoy it. That's good. It has its own ground, which is important. But yeah, I give this movie a 7 out of 10. If you saw it, let me know what you think. If you knew what I was talking about with my complaints or whatever, I like to talk about it in the comment section down below, or whatever, whatever, if you're excited to see any other movies, or if you have any other movies you want me to review, which also I'm going to be reviewing all the MCU movies in eventually. So look forward to that. But anyways, appreciate you guys. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. You guys always PattyTrills. Double check all links on the description down below. Twitter, Twitch merchandise, if you're into that. And with that being said, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. You guys always PattyTrills. I'm out. Yoga!